One of my all-time favorite books is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And in that book, one of the concepts, one of the habits is that you focus on the important and not just the urgent. Sometimes the important doesn't show up, and that's why it's so hard to do. We see the urgent, we don't see the important. What about sudden cardiac arrest that hasn't happened yet? Is your community prepared for what might happen, what could happen, what likely will someday? We're going to talk about that. Dave Fritchie of Save Heart by Heart Nation is next. Well, the heat is on. Let's get cooking. This is Purpose Under Pressure. It's a podcast about people, business folk, regular folks, just like you and me. We get up out of bed every morning, we put our feet on the floor, and we go to do something with our lives. And sometimes the pressure gets strong. Sometimes the winds come up and knock us off our path. And what do we do then? That's what this show is all about. It's Purpose Under Pressure. And we are glad that you are here. If you are here and you've been here before, you've seen this show, you like it, you're back, it must mean you like it, and that's awesome. It makes me feel good, but that's not enough. Could you do me a favor? Just like it, support it, follow it, subscribe to this show. All those numbers help other people to know, help Google to know, help YouTube to know, help all the different platforms to know that this show is worth listening to, watching, and sharing. And so if you'll do that for me, just one quick note to take care of. It really makes a difference. It helps me to get this message out, helps others to be impacted, and that's kind of what makes the world go round and why we do this. So we appreciate your follows and your likes and your subscribes. Purpose Under Pressure is and has been since the beginning brought to you by my friends at Sandler by the Ruby Group, serving sales professionals nationwide from their Akron and Columbus, Ohio locations. They're also in Jacksonville, Florida. They provide sales training for sellers, for businesses, revenue generation tips, business operation tips. They just do it. They do many things on purpose to help your business grow the right way. That's why they're partners of this show. And that's why I encourage you to reach out to them. You can find them at rubygroup.sandler.com. If you make that call today just to see what they're all about, I promise you it'll be worth the phone call. If you never do any business with them at all, you'll be glad you reached out to them, and that's okay. So please do so. Again, rubygroup.sandler.com. Welcome to Purpose Under Pressure. I am excited for you to meet our guest today. He's an entrepreneur. He's a founder of Save Heart by Heart Nation. If you're not familiar with that company or that product, you are familiar with what it does. And if you've ever seen the sad and tragic, sometimes inspiring stories of athletes or individuals or people on the job sites that succumb to sudden cardiac arrest, and they either do have or don't have access to these life-saving AED devices, that's what this show is about. That's what our guest does. These products that he manufactures at Save Heart, they are highly visible, alarmed, lighted, temperature controlled, 24/7 monitored outdoor cabinet AED devices in public spaces where you can get them when you need them. That is Purpose. We're going to talk about the pressures with Dave Fritchie. He's the owner and founder of Save Heart by Heart Nation. Dave, welcome to Purpose Under Pressure.
Thanks, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here.
I kind of gave the story away already a little bit because it is so deeply involved in purpose and it is so deeply involved in pressure that it just goes together. And if people are interested in this kind of topic, and I don't know how you're not, when you see the news and see the things that are happening that could happen and maybe don't have to happen because of products like yours, it's just something that I find very interesting. I'm grateful that you're taking on the challenge of getting it done. What makes you tick, Dave? Why are we doing this? What's your purpose as an individual on this planet?
First off, great to be here with you again. I've been lucky, to be honest with you, to be in this industry, this AED, automated external defibrillator industry, for over 25 years. I joke and I say that I used to have a lot more hair when I started, but
that's a lot of pressure.
We all have to do something. That's right. There's the pressure.
Yeah.
At any rate, we all work hard for our families, for fulfillment, right? For earnings and for everything else. I think I've been really lucky to be in this industry because it's one that, as you referenced earlier, saves lives.
Yeah.
And just to step back from that, sudden cardiac arrest is really both a public health crisis and has been for many years, and it's a serial killer. It strikes almost 400,000 Americans every year out of hospital, so out in public, whether you're at the workplace or at home or, at school. in the community. And although there's been a lot more awareness about AEDs and their benefit to putting them out where people are, they really haven't, a few things. Number one, they haven't really seen an increase in the survival rate, which is unfortunate. Even with more AEDs placed in traditional places, that survival rate is still around 10%, sometimes a lot lower in some places, some other more progressive places a little higher, but it's really unfortunate. More than 9 out of 10 people die when they succumb to sudden cardiac arrest. And that's really because AEDs aren't where people are. And that's one of the reasons that I'm excited. One of the things that makes me tick, to answer your question, is having been in the industry for so long, one of the new frontiers for placing these life-saving devices is outside. There is technology now, including that my company, Save Heart by Heart Nation, designs and develops and supplies, that allows these devices to be placed outdoors, as you mentioned, in these highly visible, alarmed, lighted, temperature controlled, and 24/7 monitored cabinets. So for instance, out in the community on public, village streets, certainly at playing fields or park districts, marinas, park trails, and probably, one of the biggest markets is high schools and schools in general and universities where our young adults live. And, this unfortunately strikes all people of all ages, regardless of your gender or your age or even your health profile.
So it's easy to understand that where the people are, and this silent killer, this serial killer, it's a high cause of death in America. It's the number one cause, correct, of non-accidental
of natural death. That's right.
Natural
in
death
the U.S. and around the world.
So what are the rules? What are the regulations? What are the demands on a community to have these available? Are there any?
We all have in our places of business and at our schools fire extinguishers that are deployed, and they're mandated by OSHA and other federal regulated agencies. AEDs, frankly, are not mandated in many places. There is a hodgepodge. There are a hodgepodge of laws around the country. Some some are more prominent than others, state by state, region by region. But really, they're a standard of care, right? We all know that we should have them, or many people know we should have them, and they do. And they've been more and more placed, as I mentioned, in our public places, indoors, in schools and in our businesses. There are some laws. For instance, California has one where they have to be in a retail setting for buildings over a certain square footage. I live here in Illinois. We're one of, I think, 7 or 8 states that require them in dental offices, when you're under anesthesia. But it's really a hodgepodge, and it's not. It hasn't been placed under a federal or a wide-ranging mandate from a regulatory perspective.
And it's interesting because in my house, I have a fire extinguisher up doors and down doors. I've got fire guides on my thing. I've got everything that the state says I should have by code. What else do I have? I put my seatbelt on every day in a car because the state tells me that I should. Or must in some ways. They're telling me not to use my cell phone. And I'm not fighting the rules. I'm just wondering why I'm not fighting the rules that are in place. I'm wondering why there's no, what's the hold up here? If these things can save lives, what's the pushback? Why aren't we just installing these everywhere?
Well, I will say there's been a lot of pushback and a lot of great activity done by just so many people around the world and certainly in the U.S. We work with a number of not-for-profits, for instance, ranging from, unfortunately, parents that may have lost a child to cardiac arrest, during an athletic event, or just because they had a pre-existing heart condition. If they're a band member,
it affect them, and so they're going to make sure it doesn't affect someone else, and they're going to take it under their own hands.
That's right. And there's been a lot of increased awareness from the efforts of folks like that. I always say it's turning tragedy into triumph. They're unbelievable people. Mm-hmm. They all have individual chapters around the country, and they're part of an umbrella organization called Parent Heart Watch. We also work with not-for-profits and local organizations like the Lions Club or the Rotary Clubs, things of that nature, where people on local level really are looking out for their community. And there's just a lot, first responders, and there's been a lot more awareness, probably fueled, of course, a lot as well last year by Damar Hamlin's sudden cardiac arrest on Monday Night Football. And thankfully he was saved, but not everyone has, the first responders right there at the field or the technology of an AED and medical professionals on the field. So that's all good things, right? That's all good momentum. But from a regulatory perspective, it hasn't happened to point where I think it should, which is to really mandate these, in public settings. That said, there's collaboration in the industry like I've never seen before. I came from the manufacturing side at a manufacturer that was a startup back in '99 when I joined the industry. And all the manufacturers at that time were really focused, of course, on the business of it. And, selling more units to distributors and to end users. And that's good. But today it's really changed for the better in that those manufacturers, those not-for-profits I mentioned, newer designers and developers of new technologies such as what we do here at Save Heart by Heart Nation are working more in conjunction than ever before to continue to place these, including in new areas like outdoors where they traditionally have not been placed. And so that's exciting. And I think we will impact positively the survival rate. And I hope that some other laws may continue to be passed then to make these even more ubiquitous.
And I want to get into the entrepreneurial side of running this business because I'm sure there's a lot of pressure there. But I have one more follow-up question about communities and these devices. They're not mandated by law. However, in
some cases?
In many cases.
Many cases there are. For schools.
In some cases there are, but if it's not, what is the pushback? And I'm sure there is some. Is it financial? Is it that we just don't see the need? If you were talking to the mayor or you were talking to a local foundation and they say, yeah, I get it, but what's that but that kind of says, I'm just not going to pull the trigger on this right now? What gets in the way?
Right. Traditionally, the pushback or the rebuttals have been sometimes from, in that example you gave, city managers, risk managers that might have said, from an insurance perspective, if we put these life-saving devices outside, what is our risk? And they weigh what is the risk of not having it versus that. Historically, they had a point in that, if they did put these out there and they put it on the wall inside a fitness center or a city location and they didn't maintain it, for instance, and these don't require a lot of maintenance, but they do have pads and batteries that expire. You do need to make sure that they work. They're almost maintenance free, but they're not fully maintenance free. So if you did that and 5 years later, you never had to use these, which is a good thing, but then you tried to use it and the pads were expired, you set the expectation you had a life-saving device on the wall, but it didn't work in the moment of need and someone passed.
So someone
it may or may not have made a difference, but you have to do that. So like a fire extinguisher that needs to be checked, every so often. These do as well. There's great technologies out there, including from our cabinets, again, that make sure the AED is present, that it's in working condition, that reminders are sent out, for instance, in advance of any consumables being expired in 2 or 3 or 4 years. So they're almost maintenance free, but they're not fully maintenance free. So that's been the historical pushback. But I'll say the good news is, and this is the result of now what's happening, in talking now the last year, 2 years in the outdoor space and putting these outside, almost all the discussions we've had with these park districts and municipalities that have involved, as they should, their risk managers and so forth, they've said, what, we're more at risk from not having these outside or not having those where people are. If someone dies, playing pickleball at a village park or at an outdoor field, and gosh, we had them inside at the weight center, the fitness center, but we didn't have it outside where people are also using our facilities. Right. That's a problem. And again, we never start with that. It's just the reality of life that, this is a disease and a serial killer that affects way too many Americans, and that there is a cure with these devices. But let's put them out where people are. Let's monitor them and let's make sure they're in working condition. So that's happened now, and that's really fueling the growth of the entire industry.
And that means that the industry has to be able to satisfy the need. And that's where Save Heart by Heart Nation comes in. Let's talk a little bit about, one thing I've learned after doing these many podcasts about purpose and pressure. When you're on purpose, when you're doing good work, when you're doing important work, doors are going to slam. And it's hard sometimes to overcome that pressure. I'm interested in building this business and some of the pressures that you see and are overcoming so that people don't end up lying horizontally on a soccer field instead of standing up and playing where they belong.
Yeah, it's great, right? We all have pressure in our lives. If we let it overwhelm us, that's never a good thing. And anything we might feel pressure in, be it a young student struggling in school or an athlete that feeling like he or she isn't progressing enough or playing enough or whatever it may be, or having family or interpersonal situations with friends. Being an entrepreneur, I think, adds a little bit of extra pressure in that, especially for me, we self-funded our business. And it's very exciting. Again, I've been in the industry a long time. There's so much purpose in it because of the great people that I've been able to meet and partner with, especially the not-for-profits, but also distributors and CPR AED trainers that are out there in the local community, spreading the message and spreading the awareness that, hey, you need to be CPR and AED trained, but you really need the life-saving device also to make a difference. That has really alleviated and really turned some of that pressure that I feel as an entrepreneur in making these and manufacturing these units and talking about cash outlay and then buying materials and using partners to help manufacture these and marketing them correctly and doing all the things that a business does on the front and the back end. That's really turned it into energy for me because of our purpose. So I just keep reminding myself, like anyone does, of what am I here for? What am I good at? How can I be more engaging with people to help make a difference? And when you're doing it around life-saving, around really, the largest natural killer in the United States and the world, it really puts it all in perspective to just keep me going forward happily and excitedly. So,
I don't pretend to know the answer to this. I just know that it takes a long time for businesses to become self-fulfilling and to take care of themselves. And I mean, there's a lot of, like you said, your own money goes in and your heart and blood and soul, everything goes in to get this done. And yet it's a small business. It's hard. And anybody out there listening knows they just don't turn on and away you go and you're in full profit. Does your purpose ever take a hit? You knew it wasn't going to be easy, but you did it anyway. You got a long career. You could have just stayed in the corporate ladder, I assume, but you'd made this switch to do this thing that is risky at best, right? I think most entrepreneurial ventures are. How were you able to justify doing it? And do you ever second guess and go, man, what am I doing?
Well, I think if nobody second guesses themselves, they're probably blind to you or they're not human. But honest to goodness, realizing what you said, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I've had my own business before, more of a service business where I was helping AED companies and also people in this life-saving AED and resuscitation industry save lives and develop new products. And that grew out of my experience for, again, 25 years in this AED defibrillator industry. And I didn't plan really, earlier to say, when I'm over 50, I'm going to go start my own business to do a full-fledged manufacturing operation and marketing and sales and everything else. However, I really had a growing conviction, I'd say. Having been in the industry for so long, I was there when our manufacturer of defibrillators was private. We were acquired. We became a public company. Luckily, I was able to participate on that financially because I was a shareholder and had done well over my career. So I'm in a lucky spot. I'm very fortunate to have been able to take that leap of faith and really get behind my convictions to then start this business, Save Heart by Heart Nation, even at the ripe old age of, 52 or 3 when it started. But I have to say, we all get to choose what we do, right? We're all the masters of our own domain. We all have constraints financially or otherwise. But I was able to, at this stage of my career, really jump in, eyes wide open, knowing there'd be challenges, learning along the way, but also having that experience in the industry with some of the players and the partners where I think that's helped me keep the eye on the prize and really try to make a difference, which is my purpose every day.
Looking at the typical salesperson, everything they do day in and day out, if we simplify all of that and really boil it down, they have 2 superpowers. First superpower that salespeople have is how they behave. Second superpower they have is what they say. As a seller, we only have 2 problems. We either said something or did something that we should not have said or done, or we didn't say something or do something that we should have said or done.
So Dave, some parts of this are personal as well, right? You have some kind of a personal tie to sudden cardiac arrest, heart issues. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I've been in the industry for 25 years. And fairly early on in that journey in 2006, unfortunately, my dad had passed. He was in hospice for 3 weeks. We got to say goodbye to him. He died of a heart attack and a cardiac arrest. And I didn't feel well at all. My brother actually said, Dave, you need to get checked out. I was probably taking on a lot of stress because of my dad's pending death. I went down to the bottom of this hospital where the hospice was located and got checked out. And I was diagnosed at the time, totally ironically, since I was in
that same moment with your dad passing.
right?
Wow.
Yeah, and he was in hospice for about 3 weeks. And I think this was after about a week or two because we were there day and night. And I was diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, HCM. And, it is an underlying condition I didn't know I had. To this day, I don't know if my dad had it, but they probably think he did, just passed on genetically. And
that's a heart thing.
It's a thickening of the heart muscle. That's right. And luckily mine is apical, which means at the bottom of my heart versus the top. And I've been checked out every year since '06. I have an abnormal EKG, but it's normal for me. And I've been checked out every year, and that thickness hasn't increased or decreased. So I probably was born with it. They don't really know. My family's been checked out. Nobody else has it. But this is another reason also, our AEDs that we place inside, outside, wherever they may be, are great if they're needed after a tragedy, sudden cardiac arrest. Because an AED is really the only thing that's going to save someone within minutes from cardiac arrest. CPR will help buy time until either an AED or the paramedics arrive on scene, but the AED is the only thing that can really save someone. Well, on the front end, I've become more and more involved with heart screening organizations, which is just a wonderful thing to do at high schools, especially, but also out in the community, so that people can detect whether they have an underlying heart condition. High school athletes, many people don't know this. When they get their physicals in states today, wherever they are, the doctor will put 2 leads on them and they'll say, hey, you look good. I'm going to listen to you with my stethoscope. You're good to go. They may not be. Only a full heart screening with numerous leads, 12 leads, will determine if someone has an underlying heart condition. Again, it doesn't have to be an athlete. It can be just a student, a band member, anyone, any normal student that's not an athlete. So I've been working more and more on the front end with these student heart screening organizations, one in particular called Young Hearts for Life. I know we're going to speak with them in a little while on our Save Heart Stories podcast.
Oh, good.
Which is why I'm so excited to help tell those sorts of stories. But I'm a big proponent of screening because it can determine if someone might have a condition on the front end, whereas we help people on the back end. It all matters. And that's why I'm so excited to be a part of what I'm doing.
And I know that podcast you mentioned, that's all those stories that are out that are changing people's minds about what could happen, what might happen, what doesn't need to happen. That's kind of what the podcast is going to be about. We talked about that a little bit before the show. It's SaveHeartStories.com.
That's right. SaveHeartStories.com. We're going to tie it into our website, and it's a great repository of various people and events and reasons why AEDs are so important and why it's so important to put them outside and from various people's perspectives. So I'm really excited about SaveHeartStories.com.
And so what keeps you up at night as an entrepreneur, mid-50s? I'm the same. I'm late 50s actually now.
You kept
started my own thing after doing a successful career. I did my own thing. I get where you're coming from a little bit. How do you know you're making an impact? What keeps you up at night, and how do you know that it's worth doing the next day? Do you have examples where you know you're gaining some traction?
I have ideas a lot about how to make things better, how to do something new, maybe how to use something that's already out there and maybe alter it and try and again make a difference in this industry of life-saving outdoor AED placement. So I look at the ceiling a lot as my ideas are running through my head. So what keeps me up at night is my mind that won't turn off. Usually it's about good, positive thoughts and things.
That's awesome.
Not always, but I have a lot of ideas that I want to put in place, or things we're working on that I'm excited about. And did I remember to do something? We all have these sorts of middle of the night feelings sometimes.
Yeah.
On the stressful side, hey, geez, am I doing the right thing? You know what? Gosh, we just had our best few months of our short 2-year history last month and the month before, and we're still in that trajectory. So that's great. But then I always think, geez, with that more of that means I have to buy more material and make more products, and that's normal business, right? So I keep that in perspective as best I can. That hey, we're growing quickly. We're making a difference in the feedback we get from our distributor partners, our not-for-profit partners, the communities and schools we work with. We get great feedback about how excited they are now because they may have had an AED or two in their school, for instance, but now they're able to protect their fields, where it's not just the students and the student athletes. It could be a band member. It could be parents that are watching a game. It could be the referee or coaches. And almost always we find that people have been touched by cardiac arrest because of its predominance, in our community and in our families and so forth. So it's those things keep me up at night about, are we doing all we can to make a difference? But we get lots of great feedback, and that certainly creates excitement and energy for me.
And I don't know the answer to this. I kind of hope the answer is no, it hasn't happened yet. Have you been able to impact change directly through your efforts, through Save Heart's efforts, where you know that because someone said yes to Save Heart and because you were able to help them, that some kind of a tragedy was averted? If so, how does that feel? And if I'll just let you answer, has that happened yet?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. There's no better feeling, by the way, than that. Before I officially founded Save Heart by Heart Nation, I was working with another operation out of Canada, great people who again, are really driven by their purpose and their mission, which we all share. And they had started to put some outdoor AED stations in the community. One such case happened in Seattle, Washington, where a soccer facility, was going to get an outdoor AED. It was delayed in production and other things, and it took way too long to get them their product. But they ended up getting it. And literally, I think it was a week, it might have been 2 weeks, but it was very soon thereafter, a young 13-year-old girl was saved by that outdoor AED that I helped facilitate. Wow. And I have to say, if that didn't happen, you don't know, because they may have been able to get EMS there within 5 or 10 minutes, which is kind of their average, even on a good day. But probably not, because with cardiac arrest, every minute that passes, there's a 7 to 10% decrease in chance of survival. It's really critical per the American Heart Association and others. If you can get to someone that has cardiac arrest, get to an AED and come back to them within 3 minutes, you've got upwards of a 70% chance of saving them. And it probably would not have happened, but in this case it did. So it was a wonderful, fulfilling feeling for her and her family and the facility that was able to protect this athlete that, was using their fields. So it's a great feeling, no question.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know that as you continue to grow, that's going to happen. I also wonder, what is next? What is the hurdle, the pressure that gets in the way as you try to grow and expand and be able to be in more fields and in more places? That's going to take a lot of infrastructure and growth. What's the pressure that's coming on the horizon that you're going to have to overcome moving forward? Yeah,
great question. We are busy at work. This plays off the theme of my ideas and what else can we do different. Mm-hmm. We're busy at work with the Generation 2 product we have, which will do the same things. It'll still house these life-saving AEDs inside of the highly visible, alarmed, lighted, temperature-controlled, 24/7 monitored cabinets. But it's going to have bigger spaces to recognize sponsors, for instance, school logos. It's going to be a little bit more visible, even I guess lit even more brightly. And so it's going to have some customer advantages. A play off that soon thereafter will be in the solar and wind or self-powered world, which we're very excited about. Some people have asked about that on increasing frequency. Right now, all of these units require power to make these lit and enable the monitoring and the communication if there's an issue with the device and so forth, so that they're 24/7 monitored. But sometimes you're out in the middle of a field or a trail. It might be hundreds or even thousands of feet away from the nearest electricity source. So to have a solar and wind option that's tested and that can power these devices to help save lives even in remote areas is very exciting. So we're on this Generation 2 with the solar and wind option. We're hoping certainly before the end of 2024 to make these and have them available. We're a good way there. And so that's keeping me up at night. It's pressure, but it's good pressure. We're also redesigning our website. We've got a number of new customers. So just keeping up with the marketing and showcasing their stories, because the more we do that and trumpet those successes of additional outdoor AED deployments, at schools and in communities and all these places, really then allows other people to see the message and see that it's happening. So we're getting a large influx of more and more inquiries about how do I do that? Or can you contact me about, how my town or school can do that? So mostly good pressure, but again, it's you can take the good and the bad and you keep moving forward.
Keep on moving forward. My former boss, and I love him dearly. I love his company dearly. I won't mention him now. He knows who he is if he's listening. He said to me, he taught me 100 things, but one thing he taught me was that you throw the football where the receiver's going to be. Yeah. That was always hard for me because I was always like, how do you get this deal done? Or how do we get this thing done or this goal accomplished? He said, no, we got to look ahead. We got to plan for this stuff so that we can be ready when it happens. He's so right. And I think communities at home, wherever your home is, need to be thinking about where the football is going to be. More kids are moving in. More activities are taking place. The bands are getting bigger. The population's growing. This is going to happen. I hope it never happens, but you have to throw the football where the receiver is going to be. You have to be ready. And so if people are in their communities now with their foundations trying to make a difference in their lives and in the lives of those that come next, want to do something in their community, want to talk about it, how would they reach out to you? How do they learn more? What's that look like? Make them feel good about reaching out, because the last thing I want is for someone to go, I don't want to call a salesman, or I don't want to get involved. I want people to make this call because this matters. How do you encourage people to reach out to you, Dave?
Yeah. Brian, it's a great point. One thing I've learned probably just from getting older and maybe maturing a little bit as a professional and as a person, I've been in sales, I've been in marketing, I've been in business development. Now I'm sort of in manufacturing as well. But I really position myself in Save Heart by Heart Nation as a resource to anybody. That's what we are. People have budgets. They have other priorities. We understand that. In the public safety realm, this has gained a lot of traction, and people have investigated this, believe it or not, in a lot of these schools or municipalities or other outdoor areas. And maybe they're now saying, wait a second, I wasn't aware there's technology now to maybe extend our program, our AED program. So we position ourselves as a resource with information, not just about our company and what we do and what our product options are, but really what's happening around the country and the world with regards to newer technologies, statistics. We provide research papers, for instance, for a lot of our municipalities in particular. They're concerned naturally about putting life-saving devices outside. How do I know they're not going to be vandalized or stolen? We have some studies that have been conducted both in Europe and here in the US where, even though it's a valid concern, of course, it happens a lot less than people think. And there's data behind that. Can it happen? Yes. Just like anything outside can be vandalized. But because there's a camera on here, because we put signage around, don't use, just use in an emergency, or these are under video surveillance, things like that. We help with data and knowledge, again, about the market, about the industry, about why other people are doing it, some lessons learned. I've got some great customers who have, positioned 25 or 50 of these throughout their county, for instance, who have said, Dave, I want to help. And these folks in their own right, be they first responders or others, say, I want to leave a legacy and be a resource as well. So whether they're the town next door or across the country, they've been able to talk to other people to say, here's what we learned about, what we did. Here's why we're doing it. Here's best practices. So it's not just the owner of the company saying it, but it's also customers and humans that have gone through this. So all of those things are important. So we're a resource to our partners, our customers, and anyone that wants to learn more. www.saveheart.life is our website. I'm Dave Fritchie, the founder, Dave at saveheart.life, and I've got some colleagues as well. We're all rowing in the same direction. So we'd love to help anyone that would like to learn more.
It's tremendous. Dave, you're doing God's work, and you're doing the work that you're shining a light where there is potential darkness, and you're exposing an opportunity and a need and filling that need. And I just think that's well worth doing. And I congratulate you for your efforts. You're like me. We're on the other side of our careers, and yet we're trying to do big things. And God bless you for doing that.
Well, you know what? We're all kids at heart, and
buddy.
I probably have more energy today and more excitement about what I'm doing. So I appreciate the compliments, Brian, and being on your show. It's really wonderful to talk with you and others and your audience about this great movement that's happening to place AEDs outside. And again, I'd love to help any way I can, and can't tell you how much I appreciate being on your show.
Well, I'm glad you're here. That's Dave Fritchie. Folks, that's one of the good guys. And if you are running a community, running a sports program, you're at a school, you just care about the people in your town, or like Dave said, the town next door, reach out to Dave and find out whether he can help you, whether you need help, what opportunities you might exist. Let's just talk about things. I like to say you don't know something until you know. And you need to find out. And so if this is one of those things that's like, I'm not sure. Well, now you know somebody. Reach out to Dave and see how he can help you. That is Dave Fritchie, founder of Save Heart by Heart Nation, our guest today on Purpose Under Pressure. It's brought to you by Sandler by the Ruby Group. Sellers are under pressure to perform. Sandler helps you to succeed on purpose. You'll find all past episodes of Purpose Under Pressure at brianmediastrategies.com/podcast and wherever you stream your favorite shows. We do this every week, and we will see you next time on Purpose.